Welcome. In this video, I'm going to be comparing the differences and the similarities between A Most Fearful Sacrifice and The Rock of Chickamauga, designed by Hermann Luttmann. Just some fulfillment updates on these two games. A Most Fearful Sacrifice arrived safely at Quartermaster on Tuesday of this week. That was April 22nd. And they are putting it into their inventory, and fulfillment for Kickstarter backers from the fourth printing will begin this week for North Americans. Then we're shipping a bulk shipment of all these games to GamesQuest in Southampton, England, and fulfillment for the rest of the world will begin shortly after. The game will be made available in our web store very soon. Additionally, The Rock of Chickamauga is on the boat right now and is scheduled to arrive in port in Miami on May 31st. So it's exciting that we'll have both games in stock and the expansion Pipe Creek pretty soon, definitely in June. Both of these games are two-player war games designed by Hermann Luttmann using the Black Swan system. The Black Swan system is an evolution of the blind sword system, if you've heard of that. And the Black Swan system is designed to be able to handle larger scale battles. If you're interested in these, I'm going to link them in the description below to our web store so you can read more about them. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. So A Most Fearful Sacrifice covers the 3 days at Gettysburg, so it's kind of a bigger scale than The Rock of Chickamauga, but it still maintains that core level feel of maneuvering in large formations over a vast area. So the A Most Fearful Sacrifice is covering 3 days of Gettysburg. On the other hand, The Rock of Chickamauga focuses on the 2-day battle of Chickamauga in northern Georgia. So still two big events, but The Most Fearful Sacrifice is a little bit bigger in time length than The Rock of Chickamauga. The Rock of Chickamauga is a little bit smaller in scope, but it's definitely more chaotic. The terrain causes a lot of really interesting engagements to happen and line of sight issues. Here's a quote from Hermann Luttmann from the Most Fearful Sacrifice designer notes. I didn't want players to feel like they were moving chess pieces. I wanted them to feel like they were managing chaos. So let's talk a little bit about the game system. Both games use the Black Swan system, like I talked about before, which is an evolution of the blind sword system. It's a card-assisted game where actually there is a command deck and you are shuffling cards in at the beginning of each turn and flipping them over, and that's determining what happens next. So it determines who you get to activate, which side is activating, different types of fog of war, friction of war cards that can be added in, and all kinds of event results tables on these cards. So there's a lot of replayability and a lot of fog of war that happens and a lot of chaos. So the Black Swan system is true in both games. So if you played A Most Fearful Sacrifice, then The Rock of Chickamauga is going to be very familiar to you. This system reinforces the uncertainty of command and chaos of 19th century combat. So like I said, you're going to be pulling different activation cards from the command deck, and they're going to determine which formation activates. And then it's going to be followed by event cards. And so there's all kinds of unpredictable battlefield chaos. So like Hermann said before, he wanted you to feel like you're managing chaos and not just moving chess pieces around the battlefield. Here's a great quote from Herm about some of the chaos and the reasoning for how he designed the Black Swan system. This is from The Rock of Chickamauga designer notes. Herm says, command in the Civil War wasn't clean. It was improvised, delayed, and shaped by luck as much as leadership. Okay, let's talk a little bit about scale and also the scenarios and compare the two games. So with The Most Fearful Sacrifice, you're getting 15 scenarios and more counters than you do in The Rock of Chickamauga. This game plays across 2 mounted maps, and you can reenact a single day or commit to the full 3 days of Gettysburg. So it's suited for long form play and also larger table setups. I know that can be a pro or a con depending on kind of what your house is like and how big your tables are. The Rock of Chickamauga includes 16 scenarios, a little bit less counters, still a lot. And it includes 2 mounted maps as well, but one of them is double-sided. Remember that there's a north and a south map, but the back side of one of the maps is actually the center map, which makes gameplay a little bit more just concise. Since a lot of the fighting took place in the center of the battlefield in Chickamauga, we decided to include just a center map so that you didn't have to set up both whole maps, but then only use the middle area. This way you could have a little bit more of a concise gameplay, smaller physical space, so it's a little bit easier to play just in a physical location in that way. So the focus here is really on tight engagements and shorter sessions that still deliver a lot of narrative depth. Here's a quote from Herm about Chickamauga. With Chickamauga, I wanted each scenario to feel like a tight, self-contained knife fight. So comparing components, there's not a whole lot of difference. You get a little bit more with the Rock of Chickamauga. There are more player aid cards, and which is nice. And then, but they're both huge, heavy boxes. You get 99 cards with Chickamauga, so there are more cards with Chickamauga than A Most Fearful Sacrifice. And there's one more scenario than A Most Fearful Sacrifice. So the boxes are the same. The art is very similar, so they're going to look really great on your shelf as a series beside each other. But component-wise, they're not a whole lot different. A Most Fearful Sacrifice does have more counters. But like I've said before, it is a larger scale, being those whole 3 days at Gettysburg versus just 2 days at Chickamauga. Here's a quote from Herm. I always aim for a system that scales up or down while keeping the soul of the battle intact. I think that's really reflective of the Black Swan system scaling up from the blind sword system and having that operational and tactical feel at the same time being achieved with this system. All right, I'm gonna go through a little bit of some more of the designer insight. In A Most Fearful Sacrifice, Luttmann's goal was to simulate the mental fatigue and decision pressure of high command. Herm says, this isn't a puzzle, it's a storm. Every turn, you're just trying to ride the next wave without wiping out. Additionally, in Chickamauga, the emphasis is on survival, not precision. Terrain blocks vision, units get separated, you're constantly improvising. Herman says, I wanted players to feel what those officers felt, lost in the trees, surrounded by gunfire, hoping your division would show up. So while these games use the same system and are very similar, and most people who play one are going to play the other, here's a little bit of some information about if you're choosing between which game to play. A Most Fearful Sacrifice is for players who want to reenact the full arc of Gettysburg. So like I said before, that bigger scale. It's strategic, long form, and deeply immersive. The Rock of Chickamauga is ideal for players who prefer shorter scenarios, quicker decisions, and tighter tactical play. So a lot of these are sweeping generalizations, but I was trying to whittle down to some of the core differences between the two games and the feel of the two games. So these games share that same Black Swan core system, but they reflect different phases of the Civil War. One of the games is about structure and scope. A Most Fearful Sacrifice, like I said, it's that scope of all of Gettysburg and then being able to play like those epic scenarios that use the whole map. And then the other, the Rock of Chickamauga, is more about immediacy and terrain and the chaos that the terrain caused. Either way, these games are both awesome. They're compelling, they're historically grounded and accurate. And not only are they historically accurate in the components and the information, but also just the feeling that Herm wanted you to have when you were playing these games. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate you guys supporting us in both of these awesome games. Like I said, A Most Fearful Sacrifice is starting to ship this week to North American customers, and then will be available in the web store shortly after. I'm gonna put a link to those in the description below. The Rock of Chickamauga is on the ship, on the way here right now, and it will be at port on May 31st, hopefully, as everything hopefully goes to plan. So we will have the Rock of Chickamauga, A Most Fearful Sacrifice, and Pipe Creek, hopefully all three in stock at the same time early this summer. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe.